Think about that carefully, because every human being has an internal self-image they unconsciously defend, even when that identity creates suffering. Someone identifies as overlooked, so they unconsciously notice rejection everywhere. Someone identifies as the responsible one, so they struggle to rest without guilt. Someone identifies as broken, so they sabotage healing before it fully arrives. The mind protects the identity it believes you are, even when that identity limits your freedom. And this explains one of the strangest patterns in human behavior. People often fight harder to protect familiar identities than to create better lives, because changing identity feels psychologically threatening. The ego matrix survives through attachment. Attachment to labels. Attachment to stories. Attachment to emotional history. Attachment to external validation. And the modern world constantly reinforces this. People are taught to build identities through performance. Career titles, social status, follower counts, appearance, productivity, approval. But eventually, something dangerous happens. The person becomes dependent on external reflection to feel internally real. And when external validation disappears, identity begins collapsing. That is why so many people secretly fear being unseen, because they no longer know who they are without observation. Pause for a moment and think about this honestly. How much of your identity was built around survival instead of truth? That question unsettles people when they truly sit with it, because many identities are formed during emotional adaptation. A child learns, if I perform well, I receive approval. So achievement becomes identity. Another child learns, if I stay quiet, I avoid conflict. So silence becomes identity. Another learns, if I make others happy, I feel safe. So people-pleasing becomes identity. And eventually, these behaviors stop feeling like strategies. They begin feeling like personality. The identity you protect becomes the reality you repeat. Now think about workplace identity. Some people become so emotionally attached to productivity that they no longer know how to exist without achievement. Rest feels uncomfortable. Stillness feels unproductive. Slowing down feels like failure. Why? Because the identity became fused with performance. The person unconsciously believes, if I stop producing, I lose value. And so they keep running, keep proving, keep exhausting themselves. Not because they truly want to, but because identity demands reinforcement. This is how the matrix traps people psychologically. Not through force, through self-concept. Now consider social media culture for a moment. People carefully curate versions of themselves designed for perception. Filtered emotions, filtered success, filtered confidence. Entire identities become performances. And the frightening part is, many people begin emotionally identifying with the performance more than reality itself. They become addicted to appearing fulfilled instead of becoming fulfilled. Because external validation temporarily stabilizes internal insecurity. But temporary validation never creates permanent peace. It only deepens dependency. And eventually the person feels exhausted maintaining the image. Because performance consumes enormous psychological energy. Pause for a moment. How much energy do you spend performing a version of yourself? Not expressing, performing. There is a difference. Expression comes from authenticity. Performance comes from fear of rejection.